Welcome to the Good Shepherd and the Child podcast, where we explore the spirituality of the Christian child through the method of the catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I am your host, Carrie Mecchi-Lozano, with my dear friend Anna Hurdle as my co-host. Recently, Anna and I read the article Grace and Courtesy in the Elementary Community by Elise Stone from the NAMTA journals. And in that article, there is a lot that we can take away of how to apply grace and courtesy in the level 2 and the level 3 atria. And so we discuss this article today, and we discuss how grace and courtesy looks for that second plane child. The changes that we as the adult need to make in order to continue to grow in grace and courtesy for this child that's going through such a sensitivity towards social awareness. In our show notes, you will find that article from the NAMTA journal. I strongly recommend you take a look. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Anna, how you doing?
Hi, Carrie. I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, I am super excited about our conversation today because I think that grace and courtesy is one of those things that people tend to only think about with the first plane child. So I'm excited to explore what does grace and courtesy look like for the 6 to 12-year-old, the second plane child.
And possibly some of our listeners are tuning in and thinking, what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does it exist? What is it?
Yeah, I would say that, like grace and courtesy and practical life. Those are the two that are like, wait, those are in level 2 and 3 also? Yes. Yes, they are.
Yes, it just looks very different. So recently, Carrie and I read a NAMTA article, NAMTA, North America Montessori Teachers Association, called Grace and Courtesy in the Elementary Community by Elise Stone. And by reading this article together, Carrie and I decided to lift up some points for us to ponder as we think about our children of the second plane in the levels 2 and 3 atria. We will offer a link in the show notes if you would like to read the article in its entirety.
Yeah, we'll do that. It's a longer article, but it's an easy read and it's a good read. Yeah, I got a lot out of it.
Right. And many of the points are applicable and transferable to our working catechesis of the Good Shepherd.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe have to be adapted a little bit, but yes, definitely usable, practical.
And it causes us to think, too, what does this look like for us?
Yeah, and I would say also even as a mother, it helps because, I got second plane children in my home. And so to look at that grace and courtesy in regards to those interactions, especially because, I have them for longer than 2 hours a week in my home. So
that's right.
I found it helpful as a mother also.
Yes. So moms and dads, listen up.
Go check out the article. We'll put a link for you.
Yes.
So when you think about grace and courtesy, you really think about it as one of those types of practical life, right? Like how to walk around a rug, how to interrupt somebody, how to get the adult's attention. Like we think about these grace and courtesy lessons that we lifted up in level 1 as a practical life. But the second plane child, they're different. They're different. So how would we look at grace and courtesy, these practical lives that, they're not pouring, they're not spooning, they're not needing to walk around the rug. They're not the absorbent mind anymore that they were in the first plane child. So how can we do grace and courtesy that best serves this older child?
I often say in formation courses that one way to think about it in level 1, when we looked at grace and courtesy, we would give presentations on how to walk around a rug. And why do we walk around the rug? Why do we not walk on the rug?
To be gracious and courteous to the people who are working on the rug, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And so we want to make sure that we are honoring another person's work. And hopefully by the time they come to level 2, some of that has become part of who they are. And they just automatically walk around the rug without thinking about it. But in levels 2 and 3, we could say we're not necessarily practicing walking around a rug. We are looking at how to walk around various situations with our friends and our peers in the atrium. How do we do that without hurting them? How do we do that and keeping that person's honor?
And their own honor.
Yes, and your own honor. Good point. Ideas, opinions, so forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like as adults, we're still trying to figure that out.
That's right.
And then you couple
this
that.
This is applicable to us as well.
Yes, I agree. I think that there's a lot of...
fourth plane plus.
I think that there's a lot of social grace and courtesies that, we all probably could still learn today, especially because the social sphere keeps shifting, right? And so there's different grace and courtesies that need to be evolved from that.
So when we think about grace and courtesy in the levels 2 and 3 atria, there is a certain amount of refinement of the grace and courtesy from level 1, like I just talked about, how the child it's become ingrained. We don't step on rugs. But we also need to keep in mind that now the child is in the second plane, the plane that Dr. Montessori referred to as the age of rudeness or the age of lost manners. So oftentimes it may seem like those grace and courtesy lessons have gone out the window. Have you noticed that in the atrium, Carrie?
It seems like that. But the Montessori perspective has helped because, as an adult, I think we immediately our pride gets hurt with this. Like we feel like we're, being treated rudely. But it helps when you can look at it through Montessori's lens of child development because you can see, okay, they're testing. They're asking a question in this rudeness. They're saying, is this allowed? Is this a way to get attention, to feel belonging? It's not from a desire of wanting to be rude. There is something underneath it that is being asked. And that is very helpful whenever you encounter that age of rudeness in the second plane child.
And often it's grounded in truth.
Yeah. They're very blunt.
Yes.
Yeah. I also like what you were saying, though, about it being a refinement of grace and courtesy, because what I get from that is those level 1 grace and courtesy lessons, they're not thrown out the window with the second plane child. Like they still apply, but like everything else, you kind of have to spiral around it a little bit more, especially because now they're in that age of reason, right? Or the reasoning mind that Montessori called it. And so you can't just tell them, okay, in the atrium, we walk around the rug like this, like you could with a level 1 child. You have to add that because for the second plane child, they need to know why.
And if we don't give them the because or the why, we get that. But why?
Right. You have to sell it to them. You have to explain it to them and include them, figure out a way to include them in the conversation, not even just tell.
So thinking of our formation courses, perhaps not as much energy was given to the grace and courtesy, the themes of grace and courtesy in levels 2 and 3, or it may not have seemed that way because we don't have specific presentations. And instead, we look at this as from a broader perspective. So hopefully today this will help everybody to think about it just a little bit more, looking at it through the lens of freedom and responsibility, social development and moral development, as you spoke about.
Right. It's so hard because, you only have so many days. It's not like Montessori training where you many, many less hours than Montessori training. So it's impossible for us to thoroughly cover it all, but this is definitely in existence. They're actually, I'm being reminded of a podcast we did with Kathy Yohani. Oh God, I want to say almost 2 years ago now. And she talked about this. I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes. I don't remember which one it is, but that's a good one to refer to, that she talked a lot about the grace and courtesies with the second plane child as well. Montessori also has a really great quote that goes along with this from To Educate the Human Potential. She says, as moral activity develops, he, the child, wants to use his own judgment, which often will be quite different from that of his teachers. There's nothing more difficult than to teach moral values to a child of this age. He gives an immediate retort to everything that we say, having become a rebel. An interchange has taken place, but nature is quite logical and is arousing now in the child not only a hunger for knowledge and understanding, but the claim to mental independence, a desire to distinguish good from evil by his own powers, and to resent limitations by arbitrary authority. In the field of morality, the child stands in need of his own inner light.
I love the end. The child stands in need of his own inner light. And that is such a way of thinking about this child that she's been describing earlier. It's like, do we know this child? This child has become a rebel.
I love that she calls that out. She's not, he's a rebel. And that's okay. That's who they are meant to be at this age.
This child wants to do it by himself, herself, wants to think for himself.
Right. And doesn't want to, where does she say it? From arbitrary authority.
It reminds me of, you can't tell me what to do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Unless you can explain, unless you can convince me, right?
Right.
Unless you can make me understand, make me believe that this is the right way, or at least include me in this conversation. They do not want that arbitrary authority. They need to stand in their own light.
Right. So if we contrast that back to level 1 again, when we've given these grace and courtesy lessons, we just really do it in the form of a 3-period lesson of this is how to interrupt. Show me how to interrupt without really giving a lot of context. And just giving space for the children to practice with them, taking it into who they are, using, again, their needs and capacities of that first plane, the need to move, the need for repetition, and so forth. That won't work now. No show me, no what is.
Right. They need the opportunity to practice living socially. They need community. And what did she call it in the article? She called it like a practice community. Is that the term she used? They need a practice community to try these things out.
Right.
And she talked about how that grace and courtesy, which we could also say is moral development, it's moral refinement. It's not something that can be directly instructed. That's not who they are in the second plane. We cannot sit there and say, okay, you can't treat people like this. We can't just instruct them in that way. We have to have a discussion with them and then give them the opportunity to live in this practice community, to play it out.
And allow opportunities for that.
And opportunities to fail within that also. You know, like I like that she talks about that in the article. She talked about how it's going to be bumpy, you know, like they're going to need to work things out to figure this out. It's not always going to be a perfect social society. It's actually probably more likely not than is, right? I appreciated that she pointed out that there was a need for that form of messy within their growth in this practice community. So it reminded me a lot of like how in level 1, I mean, the first plane child, we talk a lot about opportunities for growth and independence. You know, we allow them to spill the water. We allow them to fall down. We allow them to spill the beans or whatever, to grow in their physical independence. And so now that they're moving into the second plane, and you start seeing it at the end of the first plane, but they're now moving into this social, where we need to help them grow in independence socially. And that will also look messy. So the equivalent of spilling water and spilling beans, but for the second plane child.
That's a great analogy.
So allow for those social frictions and whatever. And then just, point to the towels socially.
Opportunities for learning, right?
Yeah.
Opportunities for development.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes it will hurt. Sometimes people will cry.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll fall down, right? Just like the first playing child. And we have to let them. There's no growth without it.
So thinking of allowing the child to do this, and oftentimes when speaking of the first playing child, we quote Dr. Montessori, the child's unspoken plea, help me to do it by myself. And then as the child ages, we can think of it as help me to think for myself, and then later help us. It's no longer me. Help us to do it for ourselves. Help us to think for ourselves. And Elise uses those examples, but several folks have given similar ideas of expanding that. Help me to think. Help me to do it by myself into the second and third plane.
Yeah, I like that. What's really sticking out to me right now, and we've heard those cries before.
Yes.
But what's sticking out to me right now from those cries is the help me part, because yes, like I was just referring to, of we need to allow them their growth and, allow them to fall, allow them to have those social frictions, allow them to get hurt and cry. But the help me part really refers to, we don't abandon them in this. We don't abandon them in this. We accompany them through that mess, right? They are not ready to do it on their own yet. So what does that mean for us as the adult to help them do it themselves, help them to think it themselves, right?
The problem is, though, it's just so much easier for us to do it.
I agree. And faster, more efficient. It's done the way we want.
And efficient.
Yeah.
Yes.
Less messy, both physically and emotionally. Just do what I say. Right. Yes, I promise then nobody will cry if y'all just share the way I told you to share.
Exactly.
If I tell you what roles to do for this project, then it will be done by the end of class and there won't be a big mess, right?
That's right. And everybody would have had a turn.
Right. But God, the learning, not even just the social learning, but even the theological learning in reference to the atrium materials is so different when it's not freely chosen.
Right. And if we think of this on a larger scale, taking it into the spiritual realm, we can say the same thing about our own vocations, our own work. Freely chosen.
Oh God, I feel like we could divert now into a whole different conversation about free will. That would be an interesting conversation. Yes.
So oftentimes with any work we do in the catechesis of the Good Shepherd, we remember that big question, who is this child? So we've been already talking about the second plane child, but maybe if we just went back and thought about that a little bit.
And she does a beautiful job of this in the article.
Yes.
Of really going into their characteristics and how those particular pertain to grace and courtesy. I really appreciate it.
So the reasoning mind, the imagination, herd instinct, social development, along with that Hebrew worship, the social justice issues, that sense of fairness. And then, as you mentioned earlier, the focus on the cognitive order and not the physical order. When it seems to us sometimes that, where did that sense of order go?
They no longer have a clean room. What happened?
Yes. And it doesn't seem to matter.
Right. And that's who they are. right? They are creating order in their mind, and it makes a very messy physical space. I did appreciate in her article how she said, though, like, so as the adult, in regards to that physical messiness, we need to allow the messiness. But then she did say, though, but then invite them into a conversation at the end of it saying, like, okay, what would happen if we left it messy like this? What does that mean for the next class coming in behind us? What does that mean for us tripping and falling as we walk through this space, or finding things when we need, like, so including them in a conversation about what you should do now, not just leaving it messy, but also not expecting level 1 perfection of beauty and order. I appreciated that.
But inviting that conversation of the because and the why.
Yeah.
What would happen?
Yeah. I did appreciate this list of characteristics, though. Like, she talked about how the second plane child no longer needs us to, like we were saying with the walking around a rug, right? So in level 1, I would model to a level 1 child how to walk around a rug. And that is me showing them that grace and courtesy lesson, right? So now for the second plane child, with their deeper cognitive powers, their imagination and their reasoning skills, they need the opportunity to use their cognitive skills to grow in this social grace, right? They now have the capacity to think about situations that haven't happened and to explore what they might do in those situations. And this is what makes me think about Kathy Yohani, because she talked about how her and her co-catechist would act out social situations and let the kids kind of guide them. And I felt, and she mentioned that skit play in the article also. And I just think that that's a really neat tool for grace and courtesy for the second plane child. But to help them explore using different tools, that's just one, but to help them explore the reasons for things. It's not just me modeling how to walk around the rug. It's us having a discussion of how we treat people, how we treat ourselves, how we're going to treat this environment. They just naturally live into that golden rule. They fall back to it. This morally sensitive child right now is so attuned to that treat others the way you want to be treated mentality.
And that just naturally springs up by living in community and seeing it, living it. But of course, in the atrium, we have help with that, don't we? So the children, the whole time that they are working in community and learning and being together, they're also working with the maxims and the moral parables, giving them even more ways to think about what it means. What does it mean to love God with all your soul and with all your heart and with all your mind?
You're working in a group project, and one member of the group doesn't do what they said they would do for it, and they're thinking it. They refer back to that
maxim. That's a life lesson right there, isn't it,
Carrie? But it makes them think of that maxim, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no, or you agreed to something you didn't necessarily want to agree to. Well, then your yes didn't really mean yes, right? So those maxims are so powerful as guiding posts, right? For their social interactions, and to help them with that refinement of skills socially. She also referred in the article about that herd instinct that they have, and you see it so much in the second plane child in level 2 and 3. And I think this is always kind of a big adjustment for us as catechists, because in level 1, they pretty much work independently almost 100% of the time, at least in the atrium. And then when they go to level 2, that's impossible. Like, that herd instinct is so strong. There's no way you're going to get you shouldn't. This is not who they are. Get them work independently, right? And so because of that nature that they have, they need new tools. They need help. They need instructions. They need these grace and courtesy lessons to help enable them to know how to work together in partners or in groups or even as a large group, right? So, and with that, they are sharing the space. They're going to be sharing materials with each other. They're sharing their time. So how to not, for one person, not to take up the whole time in the session. Like, there's a lot of learning how to not be that egocentric first plane child anymore and actually learn how to live in community that happens within the level 2 and level 3 and within that second plane time sphere.
Yes.
And they need freedom in order to do that. They need meaningful interactions with each other in order to practice that. But I think it's also, and she talks about this in the article, and I thought it was really valuable, even for us as adults, that's different than being friends with everybody. Like, you don't have to like everybody in this community, but you do have to respect them. You do have to be civil with them. You do have to be kind. That doesn't mean you have to be friends. It doesn't mean you have to be buddy-buddy. It doesn't mean you have to, choose them as your group partner. I had a priest one time tell me, even Paul and Barnabas didn't get along, and that was okay, and I found a lot of freedom in that. You love and respect people, but that doesn't mean you have to be friends with them. So it's a different type of social learning in order to learn to live in community with someone that you might not necessarily understand or get along with, or that makes the same type of choices that you do. So it's our role as the adult to make sure that the kids have those experiences and those skills, those grace and courtesy lessons that allow them to love and work with everybody that's in this atrium, in this practice community. Not only just the people that they are friends with, the people that they get along with, the people that they like. I think that's a huge lesson that we could offer them if we handle that well.
Right. So as the adult, as a catechist in the atrium, we can't force that. We can't make that happen, but we help prepare an environment that promotes that is conducive to that type of collaborative work. Some of the ways we might do that in the beginning when we are helping the children to establish these norms and these ways of being together. Sometimes maybe even asking, all right, if you all were going to work on this together, who would be the person doing the writing, and who would be the person doing the artwork, and who would be the person presenting it if you want to present it to someone, that sort of thing. Just looking at division of labor as opposed to everybody running to the supply shelf to get the art supplies. Mm-hmm. No, I want it, that sort of thing. And then helping the children see their own personal strengths and individual strengths. And so the person who reads really well, you're not going to say, oh, Carrie, you're such a fantastic reader. But we're looking for someone who likes to read, And then we need someone who enjoys writing. So not every child, a lot of times we hear, I don't know what to do in the atrium. Not all my children are reading. Not all my children are writing. Well, that's very normal to still be developing at that age, especially in level 2. But if we do collaborative group work, everybody's an expert at something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that.
And just learning how to collaborate and communicate with each other toward a common goal.
I really like that. I think it might have been Carolyn Colehouse that talked about that before, and I love that mentality. So even in level 3, you're going to have some struggling writers and readers. So you have to help the group. And even as the adult, you need to put on this lens of to investigate, to look for the strengths within each of these kids. Everyone is an expert at something. So what are they good at? And make sure that you notice those things so that you can, point them out. Because that 10-year-old already is aware that they are not a good reader and writer. So we don't need to point, right? We don't need to point that out anymore to this child. But that doesn't mean they don't have other strengths. So Be the person that notices that. Be the person that says that in front of the whole community of that strength, right? I think that is very powerful for us as level 2 and level 3 catechists to make it a practice to look for the strengths of all of the kids. Everybody's great at something. Everybody has a strength in something. But then take it a step further. When you see a group starting to collaborate on some project that they have come up with, to guide them through those steps that you were just talking about, because they don't yet know how to do this. So guide them through a few things to consider. Have y'all considered who might give this presentation to the group? Have y'all considered who's going to write on the poster board? Have y'all considered who wants to read the scripture out loud? Have y'all considered whatever, who, like Johnny is a really good artist. So what if he drew some pictures to add to the board, whatever it is, so to help, you are giving them grace and courtesy lessons by guiding them through those social situations as they occur also.
And then that herd instinct kicks in, and before you know it, the entire atrium is doing big work. Because once it becomes modeled, another group will say, we can do that. We can do that. Yeah, we can do that. But we're not going to do it exactly the same way.
Never exactly the same way.
Right. We're going to research the Greeks.
Yeah.
Or that sort of thing.
I have regularly had in level 2, and this was years ago. It's been a while since I've been in the level 2 atrium. They would herd into creating, whether it was a communal prayer time and, divvying up who was going to do what, and one person goes around and asks everybody for their prayer intentions, whatever, is either that, or it was organizing okay, so we're going to do this baptism, and we had the Rite of Baptism book as part of our reference stuff. Okay, so I'm the priest, and you're the mom, and you're the dad, and you're the godparents, or whatever, and, those kind of acting out different scenes based off of material that was in the room. And then one time they did, they made a play of, I want to say it was the resurrection, but one of the scriptures that we had done, the Bible studies that we had done, they had turned it into a play. So yeah, they come up with all these big projects. And then, of course, you bring in a string or a roll of burlap or some, construction paper or some random material, and you throw it out there and say, I wonder what y'all could do with this to help you think more about the mustard seed or whatever the theme is that you had lifted up as a group that day. And they just come up with such creative things. I find that so fun. But I think with all of this, what I also keep thinking about is how important it is with the second plane child to make sure that even in your grace and courtesies like that, how to help them divide the division of labor that you were talking about, to be so cautious in the way that I'm wording it. And you tell me, you're the expert, the second plane child, to be cautious at this, how I'm wording it with the second plane child. So it's not me telling.
Right. Well, sometimes they have to experience it first to see, that, but just helping the children to say, all right, can y'all think of a list of everything that needs to be done? Wow, that's a big list. How are you all going to get that done? And so in the beginning, they might even pair up and say, well, what if the two of us did a little research, and what if the two of us read the scripture? What if, the same idea of dividing, but first into small groups, but letting them see what happens when we work together, how that is much more than we could accomplish on our own. But sometimes we let them also see what happens when someone doesn't. That infamous group project that we've all been part of, that, what happens. And there's a moral lesson in that as well.
So again, what I hear you saying is, as the adult, you might see holes in their plan and you let it play out.
Right. And they may shift. They may fix it. Or, in the atrium, we might have a child. They might be wanting to really work on something, and that one of the children might be out that week. So So that's a whole week as opposed to a school where it's just a whole day. It'll be a week before we see that person again. And, what does that mean? If the person's not here, are we going to do that person's work, or are we going to save it for them? Are we going to help them, or are we going to take it away from them? Those are big moral dilemmas, but still part of grace and courtesy, because you're going to have to navigate that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that happens in life.
It does happen in life. So much of what we're talking about, we could be talking about our own adult situation.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie, I love how toward the end she does a little shift, and she takes it out of the more of the day-to-dayness of the children's work in the Montessori classroom or in the atrium, and she looks at it in a much more global way.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at how, once again, thinking back to level 1, the grace and courtesy lessons given in the first plane were given to the absorbent mind. And we gave these lessons to that child thinking about situations that they might encounter. So what to do if you need help, what to do if someone is disturbing your work, and so forth. But then asking what is comparable. What is a comparable situation for the elementary child with his or her extroverted intelligence? The children who are now doing bigger work and want to think for themselves, want to not let us tell them what to do, and what challenges will these children face for their own self-construction?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Dr. Montessori kind of spelled it out for us in To Educate the Human Potential, when she said the 6-year-old is confronted with the cosmic plan, and that this is the ultimate grace and courtesy lesson.
Mm.
Had you ever thought of it that way, Carrie?
No, not at all. I mean, it makes sense. It makes total sense.
Yes. I love that Elise is helping us to think about it in this way.
I think it makes it, highlights its importance. These, even in the level 1 child, these grace and courtesy lessons, but then even expanded bigger into this level 2 and level 3 child, that they have a cosmic dimension to them, that grace and courtesy is part of the cosmic plan. That's powerful.
And of course, that is echoed for our children when they work with the history of the kingdom of God, the plan of God,
mm-hmm.
and all of those salvation history themes.
What are you going to write on your blank page?
Mm-hmm.
The choices you make, will you be spreading the light? Like all of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. And we see this this communion of people and ideas, of people working together throughout history, but working towards something,
mm-hmm.
just like we're working in our atrium.
I think it really emphasizes this interconnectedness of us all, like we are not lone wolves in this plan. We are all on the true vine together, and my branch affects your branch. And so it really shows that we are all here individually, but as a communal unit, all people across all time. We are all connected, right, on this vine.
Right.
In this cosmic plan. And so the choices that I make of how I'm going to treat myself, treat you, treat the environment, it's going to affect this whole community.
And then she says, and Dr. Montessori says this as well when talking about cosmic education, that this leads the child to gratitude.
I loved that.
I'm thinking about our two imposed triangles
mm-hmm.
of the gifts of God and then the human response
mm-hmm.
to those gifts.
It's in Joyful Journey if anybody needs to go look and see what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. All the gifts that God is pouring down and all of the human response back towards God from the gift, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And gratitude. Gratitude is response.
Yes.
I like the way that she ended this article with gratitude. I like the way that she connected gratitude for all the gifts. Gratitude as a form of morality, in a sense.
And we also say that gratitude is a prayer.
Mm.
So, yes, the children do need to know. She even gives this example, how to ask for a pencil. The child it's good for the child to know how to greet a visitor. But we also want to help empower the children and help them to come to see and believe what she identifies as 3 truths. We belong here. There's work to do together. Thank you.
It's interesting. We could sit and think about those 3 truths. We belong here. There's work to do together. Thank you. As like our, I don't know, maybe our direct aims almost of grace and courtesies as a to help the child understand these 3 great truths. Again, I think it just really just shows that cosmic dimension of grace and courtesy lessons, how deeply powerful they are, and how, again, affirms the fact that, yes, there is a place for grace and courtesy in the level 2 and level 3 atrium. And that if grace and courtesy takes up a large chunk of our time in the atrium, that is valuable time spent.
Mm-hmm. That is the children's work.
Yeah. That's who they are at this age. That's who God created them to be. And so we follow that, right? That's what we do. We follow the child.
Right. Why don't you share that one more time?
We belong here. There's work to do together. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of the Good Shepherd in the Child podcast. In our show notes, you will find the quote that we read from Maria Montessori from the book To Educate the Human Potential. You will also find links to podcast episodes that we refer to in this conversation, as well as the article from the NAMTA Journal, The Grace and Courtesy in the Elementary Community, that our conversation is based off of, if you would like to go read that whole article. There are a few books that we would like to point you to that have to do with the second plane child, and the links to those books are in our show notes. The biggest one would be The Religious Potential of the Child for the 6 to 12-year-old by Sophia Cavalletti. We also would like to encourage all of our listeners to become a member of the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. There are many, many benefits to becoming a member, not only just supporting this work, but that you as a member will receive. And one of those benefits is that every month you will receive an email called a member memo. And our membership coordinator, Mary Heinrich, does a beautiful job of working on these monthly newsletters. And it has a plethora of information, including upcoming events that are for everybody, some that are just for members is in that email, as well as some videos that Mary has made that have to do with answering questions about the atria or that have to do with Montessori. And then she also has a question that people have submitted, catechists have submitted, about how they handle situations, where she answers them in that monthly membership memo. So please go to our website, cgsusa.org, and check out becoming a member and supporting our work. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook at the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, on Instagram at CGSUSA, as well as YouTube, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. This podcast is sponsored by the United States Association of the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. If you would like to know more about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, or if you would like to become a member, please go to cgsusa.org. Thank you all for listening. We will see you in 2 weeks. Go and fall more deeply in love with God.